Ceremony is a novel by writer Leslie Marmon. Silko, Laguna Pueblo, first published by Viking Press in March 1977. The title Ceremony is based on the oral traditions and ceremonial practices of the Navajo and Pueblo people. The Laguna Pueblo, Western Caris, Kawaika Quake, is a federally recognized tribe of Native American Pueblo people in west-central New Mexico, near the city of Albuquerque, in the United States. Part of the Laguna territory is included in the Albuquerque metropolitan area, chiefly around Laguna's Route 66 resort and casino. The name, Laguna, is Spanish meaning, small lake, and derives from the lake on their reservation. This body of water was formed by an ancient dam that was constructed by the Laguna people. After the Pueblo Revolt of 1680-1696, the Mission San Jose de la Laguna was erected by the Spanish at the Old Pueblo, now Old Laguna, and finished around July 4, 1699. Leslie Marmon. Silko, born Leslie Marmon, born March 5, 1948, is an American writer. A Laguna Pueblo Indian woman, she is one of the key figures in the first wave of what literary critic Kenneth Lincoln has called the Native American Renaissance. Summary. Ceremony follows a half-Pueblo, half-white man named Teo after his return from World War II. His white doctors say he is suffering from battle fatigue, which would be called post-traumatic stress disorder today. In addition to Teo's story in the present, the novel flashes back to his experiences before and during the war. A parallel story tells of a time when the Pueblo nation was threatened by a drought as punishment for listening to a practitioner of witchery. In order to redeem the people, Hummingbird and Green Bottlefly must journey to the fourth world to find Reed Woman. Teo is struggling with the death of his cousin Rocky during the Baton Death March, and the loss of his uncle Josiah, who died on the Pueblo while Teo was at war. After several years at a military hospital, Teo is released by his doctors, who believe he will do better at home. While staying with his family, Teo can barely get out of bed, and self-medicates with alcohol. His fellow veterans Harley, Leroy, Pinky, and Emo drink with him, discussing their disappointment from fighting in a white man's war and having nothing to show for it. It is revealed that Teo once stabbed Emo with a broken bottle because Emo was bragging about taking the teeth of a slain Japanese soldier. Meanwhile, the Laguna Pueblo Reservation is suffering from a drought, an event which mirrors the myth. Looking to help Teo, his grandmother summons a medicine man named Kuush. However, Kuush's ceremony is ineffective against Teo's battle fatigue because Kuush can't understand modern warfare. He sends Teo to another medicine man named Bedoni, who incorporates elements of the modern world into his ceremonies. Bedoni tells Teo about the destroyers who are bent on destabilizing the world, and says that Teo must complete the ceremony to save the Pueblo people. Believing that he bears responsibility for the drought, Teo sets out to keep a promise he made to Josiah to round up Josiah's stolen cattle. While riding south after the cattle, he meets a Womanemetsa, whom he sleeps with for a night. He eventually finds the cattle on the property of a wealthy white rancher. Teo cuts through the ranch fence, but is discovered by the ranch's employees. The tracks of a huge cougar, heavily implied to be a form of Say, distract them, and Teo escapes. Say and her brother help Teo trap the cattle in an arroyo so he can drive them back to the Pueblo. The next year, Teo reunites with Say, and spends an idyllic time with her until Teo's drinking buddies return for him. After a night of drinking, Teo realizes he cannot complete the ceremony while drunk, and abandons the others after sabotaging their truck. Later that night, Emo tortures Harley near the site of the Trinity nuclear test, trying to lure Teo out to settle their score. In contrast to their past confrontation, Teo decides not to fight. A fight ensues among the other men that results in the deaths of Harley and Leroy. Teo goes back home to the Pueblo and tells the elders he has completed the ceremony by recovering the cattle, abstaining from violence, and meeting a spirit woman in the form of Say. Meanwhile, in the mythic parallel story, Hummingbird and Green Bottlefly find Reed Woman in the fourth world. In each storyline, the act of ceremonial reunion brings an end to the drought, and the Pueblo are saved. Emo is banned from the reservation after killing Pinky, and Teo lives a content life tending to his herd of cattle. Teo, World War II veteran of Laguna Pueblo and Anglo descent. Betoni, mixed-blooded Navajo healer. Kuush, Laguna Kiva priest. Uncle Josiah, confidant to Teo who died during World War II. Say, a highly spiritual woman whom Teo loves. Rocky, Teo's cousin, died during the Bataan Death March. Harley, friend to Teo and fellow World War II veteran. Old Grandma, family matriarch and believer in customary Pueblo religion. Auntie, Rocky's mother who also raised Teo, Catholic convert who rejects the Pueblo religion. Laura, known primarily as Little Sister, Teo's mother and sister to Auntie. Uncle Robert, Auntie's husband. Emo, Teo's fellow veteran with a grudge against him. Pinky, veteran and follower of Emo. The Night Swan, girlfriend of Uncle Josiah whom Teo later sleeps with. Ulabari, cousin of the Night Swan from whom Josiah purchases the cattle. Helen Jean, a native woman who spends time with Harley and Leroy. Storytelling. In Ceremony, there are no conventional chapters and a part of the novel is written in prose, whereas other parts are written in a poetic form. The novel weaves together a number of different timelines and stories throughout. Apart from the function of storytelling, words are very important for the Laguna oral tradition. The responsibility of humans is to tell stories, because words do not exist alone, they need a story. 229. Betoni and Teo's grandmother tell various stories and therefore fulfill this responsibility. The significance and the power of words are emphasized by Teo cursing the rain with words and by the following appearance of the drought 230. Based on the Spider-Woman, one can also see how powerful words and thoughts are. The Spider-Woman is a mystical creature who set the world and whatever she says or thinks appears. Preface. When she vocalizes her thoughts and by doing so names things, they become reality. 230. Through storytelling, myths are handed down and they teach the history of the Laguna people and how they lived. 71. They also connect the past with the present. 71 because myths are old and when they are being told, they become a part of the present. Ceremony and healing. The purpose of ceremonies is the transformation of someone from one condition to another. 71.3, as in Teo's case, the transformation from disease to healing. Ceremonies are ritual enactments of myths. 71, which incorporate the art of storytelling and the myths and rituals of the Native Americans. 70. They are important for Teo's identity construction as one can see through his mental development after his experience with Betoni and the ceremony. 144. In the novel, healing means the recovery of the self and the return to the roots. 45, and one important part of the process of healing is rejecting witchery. 54. Teo is stuck in between multiple worlds, between Laguna culture and white culture, and between witchery, which is seen as a force opposite to creativity. Teo rejects witchery when he refuses to drink alcohol his friends offer him. 144. He does not only refuse to drink alcohol, he also distances himself from his old friends in a life full of violence. The search for the Laguna culture and its rituals also helps him to deal with turning away from witchery. 54. He respects the rituals of his culture by being open for the ceremonies, which is another important aspect for his healing. 54. Teo is being taught spirituality by Betoni, this way he internalizes the Laguna culture. 133. It is important that the Laguna community, e.g. his aunt, who tells Teo to go to Betoni, helps Teo with his healing, because that way Teo can overcome the alienation he feels caused by him being half-breed. Betoni also helps Teo to recover through ceremonies, which relates Teo's American identity to his Laguna identity and therefore combines his past with his present. 150. The fact that Teo learns more about and experiences ceremonies is another important aspect which leads him to healing, because he learns about his culture. The appreciation of the Laguna culture is essential for his healing. He still needs a spiritual ceremony after the white man's medicine, which indicates that he needs to experience his old and his new culture. 53. When Teo covers the deer's dead body at the deer hunting, which is a gesture performed out of respect, he shows that he initiated Laguna myths, because Laguna mythology connects all living creatures. 48. Through his connection with his lover Say, Teo is able to move forward in his healing, not only in body, but also in his spirit as he connects to the divine feminine within himself. After all of these experiences, Teo's dreams no longer haunt him, because he learns to deal with his past and he is able to link the American to the Laguna culture. 151. The cattle function as spirit guides, which leads him to healing. 374-10 because through them he learns to forgive himself for the drought. 376. Throughout the novel, Silko delves into the complexities of being caught between multiple worldviews and cultures. She focuses on the importance of blending the cultures, showing how Teo can only regain health when he chooses how to identify, and by creating his own world that bridges the gap. Through ceremony, Silko invites the reader to take a look at the witchery within everyone, and points out the steps one can take to create healing and wholeness. Native ethnic identity. The identity of the protagonist Teo is influenced by his ethnicity. Teo is described as half-breed, because, in contrast to his mother, who is a Native American woman, his father is white and does not belong to the Laguna community. His father left the family and Teo and his mother were supported by his aunt and her husband. The Laguna community in which he has grown up segregates him and he experiences despair for not being fully Native American. 71. That he is not trained or educated in the Laguna way of life supports this fact. 71. Therefore, Teo struggles between white and Native American culture and he feels like not belonging to any culture at all. The Laguna people believe that every place, object, landscape or animal relates to stories of their ancestors too. To develop this cultural identity, it is important to take care of the land and the animals. By taking care of the cattle, Teo begins to take a more active and creative role in relations to nature and to his people, which supports development of his cultural identity. 248. On top of that, the cattle function as a symbol for being alienated and different, because they are a mix of different breeds, as well. This is described as positive because the half-breed cattle are, like Teo, strong, robust, and can survive hard times. Therefore, they can be seen as a leitmotif for surviving. 367. Moreover, the city of Gallup represents the struggle of American and Native identity. As being a former Native American city, which was built on Native American territory, Gallup changed into a city that relies on the Indian tourism industry. The white Americans suppressed the real presence of Native Americans and pushed them to the borders of the city. 491. The Native Americans who lived in the city of Gallup and felt related to the land were pushed back to a specific zoning place under the bridge to divide them from the white civilization. 265. They use the former image of the city to attract tourists and make profit. Now only ethnically mixed outcasts live there. 265. 15. As Teo states, I saw Navajos in torn jackets, standing outside the bar. There were Zunis and Hopi there, too, even a few Lagunas. Military service and trauma. Serving in the war as an American soldier also enhances Teo's identity struggle. When he was in the war, he represented the United States, but by returning to his hometown he feels invisible as an American and drifts in time and space. 132. By laying down the uniform of an American soldier, Teo, and also the other Native American veterans, are not recognized as Americans anymore. This is underlined by the funeral of Teo's friends Harley and Leroy. Teo and his friends struggle to shape their identity between two different sorts of signifying realms, one the official, American identity signified by the flag, and the other, that of the erased Native American signified by the corpse. 490. Furthermore, he has a trauma from war and feels responsible for the death of his cousin Rocky. This trauma often keeps him from sleeping long, if at all, with memories from his time in the war and time spent with Rocky coming to haunt him. The physical effect of Teo's traumatic experiences manifests itself as intense nausea and vomiting, which Native literary critic Jude Todd sees as directly related to Pueblo mythology that stories are held in the belly, Thus by vomiting, Teo is purging himself of the oppressive lies told to him over the course of his life. While it is only through the completion of native healing ceremony laid out by Old Bedoni, as pointed out by critic Susan Blumenthal, that Teo is able to overcome both the trauma of war and the trauma of colonization. Teo's personal trauma accrued in the war has been identified by several literary critics as being analogous to the collective trauma suffered by indigenous people affected by internalized colonialism. Literary critic Joanne Freed suggests that the use of traumatic experience is central to the power of the narrative as it allows non-native readers to better identify with the native protagonist by effectively sharing Teo's war trauma, thereby opening up the reader to the experienced by Teo as an indigenous person. Throughout the book, Teo deals with various forms of trauma caused by his military service. Used as a literary device, this trauma allows readers to have a closer look at the violence and cruelty of history. Silko uses trauma and prejudice to tell her story, and it brings a lot of the ugliness of humanity to light. Teo's trauma also serves as a storytelling medium. The reader learns about his past through these flashes of memory, and it allows for a deeper experience within the story. Teo's trauma manifests in visual reproductions, causing him to relive the same horrible experiences over and over again. Upon his return home, Teo reacts to his survivor's guilt as many have before him. By finding his way to the bottom of bottle after bottle. The white doctors can't help him, and the natives can't either until he meets Bedoni. This healer helps Teo get through his dark thoughts and even turns it around so that Teo plans to become a native healer as well. Hybridity. A major theme of ceremony focuses on the struggles that stem from the mixed-race heritage of Teo. Teo is a half-white half-Pueblo Laguna Native American man who grapples with his identity after he returns home from World War II. As he comes to terms with tragic events he faced during the war, he must also navigate his assimilation back into society as a Native American man. 23. Hybridity is also encountered in the landscapes of the novel. After serving in the tropical wet Philippine Islands during the war, Teo returns home to find the Pueblo people in a drought. Teo had cursed the rain as a soldier, but returns to find his home in need of it. Other themes involving hybridity include the loss of land and a forced assimilation into society. Teo and his family must interact with the land in ways that are forced on them by a history of colonization while trying to maintaining their cultural traditions. Hybridity is something that Teo struggles with heavily over the course of the novel. Constantly at war with the two sides of his heritage, Teo has to figure out how to be both white and Laguna without losing the other part of himself. Matriarchal Culture. In ceremony and in the Laguna culture, a matriarchal society, there is a matriarchal hierarchy. The rules of matrilineal descent dictate that a bride continue to live with or near her mother, and not her husband's family, even after the bride's marriage matrilocal residence matrilocality. The husband must then move into his wife's and mother-in-law's household, and resulting children belong to the clan of their mother, not their father. Because Laura, Teo's mother and auntie's sister, is dead, care of young Teo is relinquished to Laura's sister and mother, auntie and grandma, and auntie is then obligated to raise Teo as her own. 2. In matriarchal societies and in ceremony, if you are a woman, and older than the rest of the women in your family, you have the final say in every aspect of the family's life. In ceremony, grandma and auntie have some struggles on what should be done about Teo's illness, but in the end it is always grandma who decides. Grandma suggests to auntie that a medicine man is needed to heal Teo. Although auntie is reluctant, she agrees, and the medicine man comes in. Tries to help Teo heal from his shell shock. In fact, there are multiple examples of auntie and old grandma not agreeing on the right course of action throughout the novel. Though it is not stated explicitly, ultimately the way old grandma felt it should be handled is always how it ends up. Including when Teo wanted to go off to war. Though auntie was fine with Rocky going, there was an understanding that Teo was meant to stay and help around the farm. In the end, old grandma told auntie to let him go, and he went. Night Swan is another significant female character in ceremony, who represents both sexual agency and maternal teachings as a part of Teo's journey to healing. She is introduced as Uncle Josiah's archetypal mistress-lover at first, but also briefly becomes Teo's lover in Introduction to Women as Sexual Beings. All the same, Teo refers to Night Swan as Naya, or Mother. Another clear example in ceremony of this matriarchal culture or hierarchy is when Teo's uncle, Josiah, saves money of his own for 25 years to buy his herd of cattle, at Night Swan's urging. This example makes it clear that the women of the family have control of the money, evidenced by the fact that Auntie makes a certain comment to her brother Josiah about how he's wasting his 25 years worth of money, $500, on the herd. Along with this representation of matriarchy in the Laguna culture, the poems, creation stories, and healing stories throughout the novel all center around a woman or woman figure including Spider Woman, Reed Woman, and Corn Woman. It is argued that this matriarchal representation is due to the Laguna people attributing the existence of life itself, as well as the agency of its inhabitants, to knowledge and the spoken word, which are in turn attributed to divine female beings in creation stories, such as the Spider Woman mentioned in Silko's novel. 26. Even the first word of the entire novel is Sinako, which is the name for thought woman who is attributed in Laguna culture for the creation of the universe. Later on in the novel, Teo also has a lover called Sei, who like the Night Swan, is meant to encapsulate the divinity of nature and female creationism in some aspect, while also assisting Teo along his journey. Traditionally, in the Laguna culture, the men are the agriculturists and feed their family and communities, and the women own the land and houses and pass them down to their daughters. Silko shows more examples of the matriarchal hierarchy when she is describing the character Robert, Auntie's husband. Robert lives in old grandma's house with Auntie and is always described as being quiet while the women of the house discuss the important issues. Silko even gives insight into Robert's mindset during arguments in one passage. He was patient with them because he had nothing to say. The sheep, the house, and the fields, everything belonged to them, including the good family name. It is described that although the Laguna peoples are matriarchal, they have a very collaborative community effort to keep their culture and peoples alive. Agency of animals. The intelligence of animals, and the characters' beliefs around that topic, is an ongoing theme during the course of ceremony. To give some background, most indigenous peoples have mythical figures that take the form of humanoid animals, including characters like Coyote. Native Americans believe that current animals are descendants of these figures, and are capable of thought and rational choice. All animals are examined through the compassionate lens of Teo, juxtaposed by his counterparts such as Harley and Emo. Teo continually ponders the intent and actions of the animals around him, while other characters view them as being stupid or unfeeling objects. Below are some examples from ceremony in which Teo tangles with the concept of non-human agency. On Teo and Darley's 25-mile-long burro ride, going up the line, to the nearest bar, Harley spends much of the trip, cussing out his burro, while Teo notes how intelligent it is of the burro to know when Harley is asleep, and how it manages to subtly change courses so it can graze during the bulk of the trip. This is an example of Teo's heightened sensitivity and respect towards animals and their priorities as individuals. In Native American culture, the Spider Woman has been noted to be one of the most foundational figures. She is the creator of the universe and often attributed to bringing wisdom and social values to her peoples. Her presence in Teo's personal healing process is instrumental, as he is a male deeply affected by an imbalanced state of masculinity due to the pressure of returning as the macho war hero archetype when he is in fact struggling to fathom what the fundamentals of heroism even are. The Spider Woman is there to give Teo the opportunity to nurture himself and to create an internal maternal relationship with himself in which he is able to nurture and cultivate a reborn, balanced and healthy being out of the ashes of his trauma. As Teo is trying to navigate Floyd Lee's land, he locks eyes with the mountain lion. The mountain lion walks away, leaving paw prints in the ground. Teo sprinkles yellow pollen into the paw prints to honor the mountain lion, and then finds his way. Mountain lions represent skills associated with hunting to Laguna Pueblo people. The assumption here is that because Teo respects the mountain lion, they help him on his journey. There is some debate as to if the mountain lion has a human counterpart. Some people, like Edith Swan, believe the hunter Teo encounters after leaving Lee's land is the mountain lion. Some believe the mountain lion is Say. Both interpretations make sense, as they are thought to be mountain spirits because of the symbolism that surrounds them in ceremony. When Teo and Draki are hunting, Teo covers the dead deer's head with his jacket. This, rubbing cornmeal on the deer's nose, and other traditions are done to respect the animal's spirit. 2. The Laguna Pueblo people believe if the spirit is not respected, future deer will not choose to die on their reservation. Cattle are a reoccurring symbol in ceremony, though critics have disagreed over what this symbol represents. In a collection of essays titled American Indian Fiction, Charles Larson argued that the cattle represent the future of Teo's people. Larson identifies that Teo's loss of the cattle is a reflection of his belief that he had severed his connection to his people. Animals and Human Development in the Contemporary American Indian Novel, a critical study by Peter G. Beidler concluded that the cattle represented a guide for Teo. Susan Blumenthal discusses both of these interpretations, as well as her own in Spotted Cattle and Deer, Spirit Guides and Symbols of Endurance and Healing in Ceremony. Blumenthal states that the spotted cattle are a hybridization of native and Western culture. The cattle are a mix of the Mexican breed and the Hereford, which makes the cattle more suited to survive, representing the advantages of cultural hybridization. Silko consistently uses metaphors to compare the cattle to deer or antelope, marking a spiritual hybridization as well, as deer and deer spirits represent freedom and wildness in Laguna culture. This hybridization is reflected in other themes throughout the novel, including the adaptive nature of native cultures, Teo's ethnicity and culture, and the mixed ceremonial or healing practices. Ceremony has been well received by readers, and received significant attention from academics, scholars, and critics. It is widely taught in university courses, as part of American Indian Studies, American Studies, History, Religious Studies, and Literature courses. Poet Simon J. Ortiz has lauded ceremony as a special and most complete example of affirmation and what it means in terms of Indian resistance. Denise Cummings, critical media and cultural studies professor at Rollins College, has described ceremony as a novel which immediately challenges readers with a new epistemological orientation while altering previously established understandings of the relationship between reader and text. Silko received the American Book Award for Ceremony in 1980. Ceremony is considered to be a key publication in what is known as the Native American Renaissance. This Renaissance is a term coined by American literary critic Kenneth Lincoln in his book by the same title and describes the significant increase in fictional literary works published by Native American authors in the United States since the late 1960s. 49 published in 1977, Silko's ceremony was influential in providing a historical perspective of the Laguna Pueblo and the consequences of World War II on indigenous people who served in the United States military. 50. Ceremony is thought to be part of the first wave of contemporary American Indian literature, in which stories contain themes of a return to reservation life and tradition, as well as ceremonies and the rituals of tribal people. Teo's reconciliation with his heritage and identity fit into those classification, and those themes serve as exemplars of the desire felt by Native people to return to the old ways and to live lives of tribal sovereignty and the exploration and desire for recovery of identity, both individual and collective. 51. Teo's return to reservation life is fraught with his struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as his experiences and observations on the modern horrors of poverty and alcoholism that have affected his friends and family. In contrast, Silko shares poems and Laguna creation legends that keep the story grounded in tradition. Since the publication of Ceremony, author Leslie Marmon Silko has achieved much acclaim within Native American literary communities. In 1994, Silko was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Native Writers Circle of the Americas. The end.